So, and yeah, it's something that it could be a real fun event.
So this is the Art for Autism?
The Art for Autism.
On the 28th?
28th.
Here you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and put the date down then that you have the pen, okay.
And then I do want to get to diNo. I want to say that I wrote down a few things here. A most interesting individual and a true friend. And when I say interesting, we all know that most interesting people, if you know people around the world, the most interesting people seem to have one name that defines them. Okay? diNo. Okay? But what makes him even more interesting, he takes it to a complete different level because they have one name. But how many of them, or anyone else you know, then capital letter is in the middle of their name. It's a small d, small I, capital N, small O. And I always do it wrong. I always spell it wrong. But, you know, that's interesting. That really, and he is. When you look at his artwork and what he does, it's absolutely amazing. And the other thing I wrote down here is that he is also very colorful. You'll see that, and colorful in so many ways. Not just his artwork, but just the way he speaks and talks to people as well. Very interesting guy. diNo, I'm going to hand it over to you. It's all yours.
All right, thanks for All right, I know a bunch of you all, so that's good. That makes it a little easier. And then there's some that I don't know. Has anybody here not seen my art before ever? Okay, nice. All right, so there's a couple. All right, so I've been picking Frank's brain for about a week now since I knew about this, and I've been trying, because I've never come to one of these. So I heard a lot of people demonstrate stuff. I've kind of heard about things, and if I were to kind of just demonstrate something, I'd be able to only get like a tiny piece done in about an hour and a half. So I'm going to kind of go around, and I figured I want to imagine myself in your spot and what I'd want to hear if I was listening to me. So I'm going to kind of tell a lot about different things, because I personally love hearing about the path of artists. I think it's unbelievable throughout time. Just artists, I mean, the agony and the ecstasy with Michelangelo, and just to hear the struggles and the triumphs of artists is just something that really, to me, is like, it's the best stuff. I love hearing about that stuff. So I'll start. I grew up about 3 miles that way in Sharon, right near the farm on Wallamallapog. And that was where my creativity formed. I was surrounded by nature. We had like a long driveway. Just everything was really beautiful there, and I became friendly with nature at a very young age, and my older friends and relatives always kind of took me in there. My parents always told me about it, and I just loved being outside. And so I started to kind of look at forms, and I used to have a dead bug collection because I loved all the colors of the bugs, and so I used to arrange them in weird ways and stuff. So I had a lot of, as I kind of remember as I'm becoming more of an artist and discovering my own kind of ideas and stuff more and more, I'm always remembering things from the past that I either forgot about or just that played an important role and I just didn't even realize it. So kind of I'm digging for kind of why, I'm always digging in my head kind of for why I do certain things, and so there's a lot of different kind of interesting things that I did when I was a kid that is just shocking that I'm doing what I'm doing now. It's kind of cool. So I started, I was born to my mother was a teacher. She taught for about 40 years in Needham. She loved science. That was kind of her specialty. Space was her really big specialty. She had one of her students was Suni Williams, who was an astronaut. So my mom got to go to the launches, and my mom actually was a key part of inspiring Suni to become an astronaut when she was in like 4th grade or something like that, I think. So Suni remembered that and kind of paid it back to my mom, which is great. But so she always instilled in me a love for space, and like all my projects used to be about space and the mysteries of space. And so I grew up very young trying to figure stuff out. And so one of the disclaimers that I will say is that as part of growing up in this kind of very free-minded way, I think very kind of uniquely about a lot of stuff. And so without going into too much detail, my description of the world and my kind of structure of the world is kind of based a lot on what I feel is right and a lot of ancient stuff. I've always been very into how the ancients thought about the universe and structures of the universe, from the Buddhists, the Jains, the Hindus, the Mayans. That stuff just fascinates me. I can't get enough of it. When a lot of people around me are talking about like sports and stuff, like all I want to talk about is mysteries of the universe. So I love that stuff. And that's probably from my mom. Although she doesn't want to listen to me anymore because I've got she gets a little worried. But that's okay, that's a whole different thing. And then my dad, on the other hand, is a totally kind of different side of the spectrum. He's an engineer, and he's very mechanical, and he is a lot quieter than my mama. So I'm really a combination of both, plus all the other stuff I've learned around me and from friends and everything like that. And so with my dad as an engineer, my first bit of creativity was in his workshop. And so he always had a workshop, he was building things, there was always loud noise, sawdust going everywhere, and so everyone always emulates their father at the beginning, and I loved being in that workshop and hammering things with nails, making things. And so some of the first stuff I made was like all these race tracks, and I would make all these different kind of inventions and put them together, like different ways to use things. So that's how I really started to think initially. And then as I did that for a long time, I always did that. And one of the things, there was a thing called constructs, and they're like Legos, but you piece them together, and I was really into them as a kid. And one of the things in relation to the story I was telling you about, things that I did when I was young that relate to now, is I used to, when I was like about 7, I had like an obsession with every morning, every Saturday or Sunday, I'd kind of wake up and I'd watch a movie. I'd wake up before everyone else, I'd watch a movie, and I'd build a portal out of these things. Like all these constructs were very rigid and perpendicular and straight, and so my thought as a young kid was I wanted to turn them into a circle and make something that they couldn't do. So I used to make these really big circles like this, and then I would jump through them, like pretending they were like a portal to like another world, which is ridiculous because that's like all I think about now. But back then it was like pure imagination. So some of the stuff you will hear is like, it may sound like fantasy and like imagination stuff, and it is a lot of imagination, but a lot of the things that I'll tell you today, I'm not making anything up. It's all kind of things that have happened. And dreams and stuff have been very important as well. So it all kind of factors into what makes me kind of do what I do. And so, so after that, the other just the creativity after building, I remember I was in 4th grade, and we were told to write a short story. And I asked the teacher, it only had to be 4 pages, and everyone was like, oh no. And I loved reading at the time, and I asked the teacher if I could do more than 4 pages, and she was like, okay. So I made like a 25-page story in like 4th grade. And it was awesome. I loved it. And then I kept kind of doing little kind of things like that. And then in 6th grade, I hand wrote a 350-page story. 7th grade, I typed a 450-page book. And then in 8th grade, I typed what was going to be the best thing I've ever done. It was just like amazing. All my like writing skills were honed. My imagination was great. I had the best idea, and I got like 250 pages in, and my computer crashed. And I was just like, ugh. I was like devastated. And I was just like, okay, I'm done with writing, and I need to do something else. So then I started getting into music, and I introduced my sister to heavy metal kind of just one random day. And then we started to get kind of into rock. And before I knew it, I was air guitaring, all this kind of stuff, and I was like saving up everything I could and doing laundry and doing whatever I could to get a guitar. So then I finally got a guitar, and I think about 8th grade, and I saved up for it and earned it, and then I began guitar immediately. Within a week, I had joined forces with like 2 kids in my neighborhood, and we started a band. And a lot of people usually get a guitar and they want to write, or they want to play things that other people have written. I immediately started writing music, and I even developed my own like code for how to write music, and with all these numbers. And so I immediately did that. I had books, I recorded music, and then in high school I formed a band with my friends, my neighbors, and then we formed another band with the other side of the town, and we became a band that's still around today. And we toured, we've recorded like 4 albums. We toured Europe. We toured America 3 times. We played like 300 shows, and it's really awesome. And without like that kind of, like the creativity that I found in music was something amazing. And I love all forms of creativity, and that's like my main kind of theme is that throughout my life I've always had to have these things going. And music is a really amazing thing because like Joanne and Frank's son knows, like being on stage is kind of like, it's a miracle. Like I mean, I've had like, and that's another thing that's kind of kept me going on this creative path is the miracles. There's been a few different things that are almost inexplainable. And like one time with music, I was in Kansas and I got food poisoned at some Mexican restaurant, and it was terrible. And I felt horrible. And then we played a show, and for 45 minutes I felt like 100%. And then right when we got off stage, I was immediately sick for the next 2 days. It was just that creativity it cures you. It does magical things. And another time I was painting a mural in a friend's house, and I got sick one night, and I was just like, you know what? Instead of just like laying on the couch and just kind of sulking, I was like, I'm gonna draw. And I drew for 9 hours straight, and I brought a fever from 103 to 99, and I was cured by the end of the day. It was amazing. I tested it too.
Do you ever sleep? I was gonna ask the same question.
Sleep is a funny thing. I kind of always, I don't really like to sleep too much, but I like to dream. So I've had certain times when I'll be kind of, I don't know how to really explain that. I guess over time, I've been sleeping less and less, to be honest. And I find that I need less. Like I used to kind of get, if I got 7 hours of sleep, I'd be a little groggy. Now I can get like 4 and be like fine. And like I don't know how many of you have seen the animal drawing. There's one, I have one drawing that's got a map of, it's a map of the world about half the size of this table, and it's made of like 1,250 animals. And it took me about 9.5 months. And but that one took a lot of research too. It took a lot of different things. And so there was one point, and this is another kind of one of the magical things that happens is, towards the end I wanted to finish it. I usually will do, with art I can work as hard as I can and really never feel anything negative from it. But so towards the end of this process, I wanted to get out by summer, so I did like 20-hour days about a week and a half in a row. And like after the first like 20-hour days, like things start to be a little dreamy, and then things really get nuts. And like within a week, I remember like I went outside once to take like a break and like eat a snack, and a hummingbird flew like around my head in a house that I lived at my whole life, and I never saw a hummingbird. And then I'd like I've had certain like during that one towards the end, like I would swear I would go into the woods and take a break, and the animals would like do things to get me back in the house to finish it. So maybe whether it's all in my head or whether it's actually happening is another different story. But it's real. It really happened. But one of my models for sleep though is I refer to my sleep as the Tesla schedule, because I love Nikola Tesla's been another person that I've heard about when I was young, and he's blossomed. And I've been invited to the Tesla Science Foundation, the Tesla Convention. And I've done Tesla mandalas, and I love the guy. And I feel like he's one of the people that dedicated his whole life to kind of understanding the world around him. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do too, is figure out what's going on and all these mysteries. And he had a very cool schedule, which after I had naturally come upon the schedule, I found out about him doing it. And he really only slept like 4 to 5 to 6 max hours a day. And he'd even do work in his dreams, which is like he'd be figuring out things in his dreams, so it's almost like he never stopped. And that's kind of the way it tends to happen. I had one drawing that I did of Salvador Dali, where I put 110 Dalis into one, and for the entire 3 weeks of drawing this, I had Dali-esque dreams. Every single night was like a surreal like majesty. And then when I was done, they stopped, and I haven't had anything like it since.
Oh.
And then and recently I did an extinction thing, and this extinction mandala. And for a week, I was in the 19 to 20 hour work day. I wanted to get it done, and I didn't get any dreams during those sleeps. But when I ended it, when the drawing was done, I slept. I had the most dreams I've had in years, and it's really awesome. So they're kind of connected. And subconscious is a big part of art, and whether you know it or not, I guess it's the other half of kind of the consciousness and the subconsciousness. And when art really nurtures that part of the brain, I feel, in a way that maybe people don't really even know too much about yet. But art and creativity they're just so powerful, and they're so good for the body that there's nothing better. Why do anything else, really?
I believe it.
And it's, and I mean, it hurts your social life a little bit, but like, and so many times when, I know I'm gonna draw something for like 20 hours, and I'm like as excited as like someone going to like a sports game, like a World Super Bowl or something, but it's just going to draw art, and that's what it's kind of all about. And so, let's see. So after that, so I kind of, in order for art, I really just doodled in classes, and like I was used to hotel pens, and I kind of would just draw. And art, like music, was really my main thing. Art was just kind of a little thing I would do when I didn't want to listen in class. And but there was also one of the things that also kind of reminded me of how I came to be was there was a period in like 4th and 5th grade when one of my best friends, we used to meet up before school and we were tracing everything. Like we went through a phase of like a year and a half where we just traced like as the smallest things we could possibly trace. And we did this like as an obsession for like a year. We used to take out Van Gogh books and art books from the Heights Elementary Library, and really we were just soaking in as much as we could, and our goal was to get as detailed as possible. And I had totally forgotten about this era until me and him kind of rehashed it a couple of years ago. But that definitely played a big part in me getting really small with my details. So inevitably, the only art class I ever took in college, I went to UMass for 2 years, which was pretty useless. And then I went to Northeastern and majored in the music industry, which was again a little bit not too important. But my real quest was kind of art and my self-teaching, and really that kind of started to blossom. And so the intro to art class, we were forced to buy these pens, which changed my life. Just this one pen. I don't know if you guys have ever seen these Micron pens, the Sakura. This one's the .005 millimeter one. It's like drawing with a needle. And so we had to buy these, and I was like, what is this? And I was like, because it was just not a hotel pen. I was used to pens that you had to like slam and occasionally like bend in order to get them to work. And this was a whole different world. And then I saw all the different sizes, all the different colors, and I was hooked. Because not only like could I just kind of zone out and do things like on my own, or just kind of do things like take what I was drawing in my books to a whole nother level, but I didn't have to rely on anyone else, and that was the most important thing. Like with a band, you have to rely on everybody else to be there at the same time. Everybody's got to be in the same kind of zone, and it's tough as life gets tougher. But with art, you really can do it at any time, and there's nothing beats that. So you don't have to listen to anyone else's really opinion. You can just kind of get in the zone and really quest. And so that's when my quest in art really began, was when I discovered these. And at first I did a lot of just kind of doodlings and random shapes and just kind of meaningless subconscious stuff, put on music and things like that. And then it gradually just kept getting better. And so I stuck with black and white, or just black ink for about 4 years, or maybe 2 years. And then I've met actually people who also do this. They're kind of sometimes when people start in black ink, they're like, I'd never want to go into color ever. Like it's just, there's a resistance to it.
So diNo, is it the color or is it the feel of it? What is it that's so amazing to you about that pen?
Oh, the pen in general. Though this had nothing to do with the color. It was just the tip. Just have you seen these before? They're like needles. So instead of like like a Sharpie tip, like this is the big tip right here. This is one of the bigger ones, like the extra thick. And then there's the this one, like the ultra fine, which is great. And then there's these ones, which are like kind of a little bit more fine. But then there's these ones, which are like, it's like literally like using a threading needle. And so the detail you can get with this is just incredible. And so I kind of resisted color a little bit, but then I was like, all right, I'm gonna try a couple. And I inevitably got kind of into like, so you can see this one is maybe about 6 different colors. I did maybe 3 kind of other drawings before this, and then this was my first mandala. So this was my first circle. I called it a clock because my mind at the time was like, how can I make, I knew I wanted to see it moving, but I didn't really, the spin is something that I'll show you later on. It's a whole nother world. But my initial thought was just that it would rotate every second. So you'd have a clock where you could just have the time be 1 arrow, and then it would just rotate like as a second. So slowly rotate was the idea with that. It looks all jumbled and it's a mess. I was all a little nuts back then. But if you look, but if you look, it's all like super fine detailed. Like it's completely different than the world that I've come to now. but it's really fine details, and it's got white. It's got like a white space in the background, which you'll see is now my enemy. I try not. I do my best to not leave any white space anymore. And it's but during with this, I realized quickly that with the trying to get it to spin like rotate with a clock, I'd have to deal with all these different pressures. I'd have to figure out the weight. I'd have to find a gear that was perfect. It was just like, ugh, I did not want to deal with that. So I was just like, I'm gonna see what happens if you hang it from the ceiling and spin it. So I hooked up a little tripod to it, a tripod of strings, so 3 different strings on the back, and then kind of like a little string. I was gonna do that, I totally forgot. But and then I hung it from the ceiling, and I was like, we'll just see what happens. And I laid down on the ground, and I kind of like checked it from different angles, and I spun it, and something really amazing happened. Like I had always loved magic eye and different illusion things back in the day. I could never see the magic eyes, but I loved like optical illusion books and different things, and I knew there was something cool about all that kind of stuff. And moire illusions, I don't know if anyone knows those. It's kind of like when you see 2 fences and they form weird little patterns. Yeah, I was interested in those and spinning things like spin art and stuff. But so I hung that and it spun, and I was immediately like, oh my god! I started kind of like shaking, and I was like, someone's got to see this. And so I brought like other family members in. And so what it kind of did, well, what it appeared to do at the time was it like all those kind of things almost became multi-dimensional. Like you could, once you were staring at it and it was spinning slowly, so you could still see what was happening, it formed like a 2-dimensional thing, basically turned into something that I didn't understand at all. And I couldn't stop staring at it, and I was like, I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And I realized immediately that there was just so much potential within a circle. And this was before I researched Young or ancient Hindus or anything like that. So it was just kind of me naturally coming upon this power, and then I immediately wanted to unravel it. So the next one I did was a peace sign, and that was like, it ended up, I was actually it was more detailed than that one, but I was pretty disappointed in it, because when I spun it, it didn't really do much. I was like, And then, so the next time was when things really started to get kind of nuts. So I decided that, I knew that the whole spinning was something special, and it was something that I had to really look into. And so I was thinking about what shape in general is just absolutely impossible to ignore in a visual sense. And I settled on a spiral, obviously. And so this was the first one I did that was a spiral. It's called spirai, I called it. And then in order to do this one, I basically researched the golden ratio and all kinds of the golden ratio in art and different spirals in nature, fractals. I read book after book on the golden ratio and all the different things and all the techniques and the math and the science and the examples in nature and everywhere. And I was like, okay, so I'm gonna try this. And then I spun this. It actually happened kind of right around the time when I hurt my back. So I was a little bit handicapped temporarily, and really one of the main things I could do was lay on the ground and stretch. So I was like, it's kind of good timing. So I hung it from the ceiling in the spiral, and it was something totally different. Like it turned into it literally, you could make it appear like it went in or it went out. It did something just unbelievable. And then I asked my friends, I was like, you guys seen this? And everyone else saw it too, so it wasn't just me. But I knew something was up. And so this one, like whereas that one that you guys have has some white space, the second one I did had some white space too, and this one signified the end of my of leaving white space. Yeah. And this one, if this is still to this day my most treasured artwork. Like I'd be very upset if anything happened to this one. And it kind of it's only about 16 inches, but I spent years on it, and I literally there's not one drop that's not like where it should be, and it's really kind of magic. And a lot of the times I was under the impression that if I drew it detailed enough, like it would either come alive or I'd get sucked in. And that was definitely kind of just like an inner joke I had in my head. I didn't really think that, but I kind of did. And also like I noticed different things. Like sometimes with certain drawings, like I would note they almost seem to a mandala when you focus on them and kind of. I don't really totally use the word meditate, but focusing on it is like they do weird things. Like they can kind of pop up just staring at it. Like a lot of Buddhists and Hindus, like it's an ancient kind of practice to really meditate on a mandala and think about different things, and so I was kind of bringing that in. And the spiral started the whole thing. So spinning, it became a totally different world. And so one of the things that really I felt was important, whereas this was kind of subconscious, there was also, it also had a lot of meaning in it. There's a lot of kind of different things that I kind of put in there. And one of the arts that one of the reasons why I loved art, and when I was young, my parents took me to Europe and I saw some of the Renaissance masters, and I used to always love when someone would put in something that only they knew about, or it was like a hit. Michelangelo put things all over that the Sistine Chapel that people found out years later and didn't really know about, and I love that. So people are gonna, and as a result, people will be looking through my stuff and finding things for years. but I think that's great, because it's kind of, my goal is to get people to kind of look at stuff a little more deeply. So I started to get kind of into more meaning and tried to do things that I wanted to learn, that I personally wanted to learn about, because that's kind of where my path as an artist is really all about, is trying to learn more about the world around me and the ancients, and try to just kind of get a grip on what's happening. So I've done things like Native American mandalas. Like this one has about 80 different Native American symbols on it. I love Native American stuff. The Mayan Aztec calendar, like this. I'm actually convinced that the ancients knew about the spinning process of a mandala, and they knew kind of that. I just can't imagine that they would have taken so much time to do all these mandalas and not see them spinning. It just, to me, doesn't seem right. But there's no research on them, about them spinning. And Carl Jung even, he talks about mandala symbolism. He talks about them as the portal to like the soul. And he used to use it with his patients. He'd have them draw mandalas, and then you'd step back from it, and you'd be able to really, you'd be able to kind of figure out things about your own self by looking at what you drew.
Okay, so for somebody like me, I know nothing about what you're talking about. So if I took that and I put it on a nail,
Yeah.
and I spun it, what would I see the effect?
You
Or do I have to be under it? I mean, is there, and then what exactly is a mandala? I don't know what that is.
Well, mandala is the ancient term for circle. It's just basically Sanskrit for circle, and it's kind of
Anything in a circle can be a mandala.
yeah, and then also
Is that all?
the what?
That's all it takes? I didn't know
Yeah,
what
well, that's in
constitutes
general.
mandala.
It's just really literally means circle.
Okay.
So that's but the term mandala in Buddhism kind of can accompany the space around it too, like if you guys ever seen a Thangka painting, they're like Tibetan kind of Thangka, Thangka. They did a lot of kind of things where there's a central object, kind of like a central mandala. It might even be a circle, and then they fill in the outside with other stuff. So like this, like, and then I have another one, the universe, and so I kind of look at it as, mandalas are all kind of separated into, you kind of separate them into segments if you want. Some do symmetrical mandalas. I get really bored by doing symmetry, so I tend to not. But so this would be considered a mandala too, even though it has a circle in it, but its whole thing is kind of a mandala. And the thing that I think is great about these is these ones with the outside, is that you get like the power of the mandala, which is kind of like it's like the main focus of the artwork, and it could exist on its own. But then you have the world around it too. So it's kind of like, it's almost like symbolic of just kind of everything else that engulfs it. Like, and so you can kind of take an idea to really a completely different dimension. Like in this one, I call it the Jainiverse, and this is part of my Structures of the Universe series. And so one of the structures, one of the cultures I'm fascinated by is the Jains. It's kind of like an ancient Hindu sect, about like 4,000, 6,000 plus years ago, but they're still around today. And they believed in their structure of the universe is that this whole world is a giant sphere that's 6 billion miles wide and 6 billion miles high. And so there's an underworld where there's layers of life, or layers of things, and there's above, and then and we're like this little tiny part in the center. In magnetic north, they said, where the magnet points is this mountain called Mount Meru, which is supposedly the center of the universe. So I have that in there. And so with this, if I had just kind of kept this a mandala, it would really only contain like the sphere of our world and where we live. But to bring it to the outside and like kind of extend the mandala, you get like Shiva imbuing like energy and life into it. You get like this goddess, Shiva playing the flute and almost like harmonizing it. or you have the other gods kind of basically, you can add an extra dimension to the art, which is, I think, really cool. And takes a lot of extra time, so you can put in, it's a circle, just kind of looks awesome, but it's worth it. And that's still a mandala too, and it's kind of just the, you know, it's like almost like something you can meditate on, and it's something you look at and you really can kind of take in. And meaning is, like I said, meaning is something I find really important. Like, this is the battle of good and evil, and there's just unbelievable amounts of symbolism in it, from ancient times to modern to my own kind of thought. And they're really neat. It's almost like reading it's kind of like reading a story, and everyone has a different interpretation of it. And that's actually kind of funny. When I was doing the spinning, when I was first doing that spiral, it was kind of around 2006 or something. And so when my friends would come back to my house sometimes, if they were like drinking a little bit, I would kind of do experiments on my friends, and I'd kind of get their opinion like before randomly of like what they saw, and then I'd kind of test them during other psychological states. And a lot of times they would see things that like would that would reflect their psychology. Like, someone was angry and they saw like really angry things in this. And if someone was really happy, they'd see, oh my God, there's a rose in the middle, and I see like, oh, there's just like all this beautiful stuff. So it's almost, I call it like the ultimate Rorschach drawing, because it really, it pulls out something in you, and everybody sees something different. And I attribute that to the fact that this one is more of a subconscious thing. So I use my subconscious, and it kind of pulls out other people's. Whereas you may not see as many different things in something like this, because it's more concrete. But yeah, so that's, now you guys can feel free to shout out questions at any time. I kind of like that, yeah?
I'm looking at this. Now, this is very time consuming.
Yeah.
What do you price something like this at, and how many do you sell? This is just totally unique
Thank you.
piece of art. This is not,
Well, the
Normal.
originals, that's why I have a tough time pricing the originals, because, and I usually tend to price them too high in the hopes that someday they'll obtain that value. But I personally strongly dislike seeing like artworks sold for like hundreds of millions of dollars that are from dead people, and it took them, even though they can't do any more, it may have taken them like a day, and it's worth $125 million, and they don't even see any of the money. Meanwhile, there's starving artists
Yeah.
everywhere, and they just throw us a bone. So I don't price it like that, but I price them like a little bit. My main thing though is selling prints. Like, I'm a big fan of getting these. I feel that they're very important, so my goal is to get them to as many people as possible and expose them. They're all very positive, and that's part of my intention, is showing the positivity and kind of showing people what they may not have seen, and kind of encouraging them to like research more. But so that with prints, I can make it really affordable.
now when you display these in your home, and I'm sure you want to keep most of these originals that you've done.
I mean, I'd love to get rid of them, but
Really?
they're starting to pile up now.
Who's the rich person
How
out
many
there?
have you done? How many have you,
A
do you
lot.
know how many? Do you have a figure
This book.
since you started?
This book's got just alone. These are just my mandalas, and so there's at least like 50 there, and this is only part of
But I
them
think
too.
about all the catalogs of prints you have at the gallery.
There's tons,
I mean,
yeah. Those are
and they're
known.
how many, I can't even,
I usually say like
it's
over.
like
I'd
you
say
should be
I've done.
500 years old. The time it has taken to do these, I can't even,
I just don't
Right?
stop. It's attributed
Yeah.
to that.
Right.
And now actually my fiance is an artist too, so we can kind of combine forces on some stuff, which is great. So it's increasing our productivity even more. But yeah, they do take time, and that's why I really can't part with them too easily. And I do feel they're important to get to the public. And one of my goals is to inevitably use them to raise money for causes and sell prints, and that way people can kind of learn about things and kind of direct certain things at different things. But yeah, only time will tell. And actually, it's funny that I like how you guys are really impressed with this one, because I brought this one in because I'll at some point show you that it's still not. I look at this and it's not even done. I see mistakes.
see
everywhere.
white.
I don't see white, but I do see a little
Around
bit of
the
white.
edges.
Actually, I do see it. I see white, but then the closer I look, I can see like little kind of lines that I would touch up. I can see them all over the place. And so when I draw something, it really has like a few phases. Like the initial phase will be like when the circle is complete. And that's kind of like a relief because it's like, sometimes I'll pencil stuff and other times I'll just kind of go with it. And a lot of the times, like I'll do, since I do it slow, it comes kind of in sections. And so if I don't know what's gonna happen in a certain spot, I just won't fill it until it shows itself to me, really. Yep.
Dino, have you ever worked in 3 dimensions, spheres,
That's
pyramids,
it's where the future I hope will hold, but
underside of a dome?
I would absolutely love to. That's my next kind of step because the circle, the 2-dimensional circle, you can only do so much, but with a sphere, I have a feeling you can do a lot.
That'd be insane.
That would be
That'd be
amazing.
really great.
And spinning too would be very cool, and to get it to maybe gyroscopically spin would be pretty amazing. Hopefully in time I can do it.
Do you ever think of doing one of them where you start off as far back as you remember when you're young and almost put your life in this circle?
That's
From the beginning to the end?
That's a good idea.
To getting to, as an older person, maybe you never even finish it, who knows, but.
Yeah, that's a great
Maybe
idea.
you'll just keep going on and on, you'll need to make a bigger and
huge
bigger
one.
one.
An ever-growing mandala. That would be cool. I'd like that. And I love hearing ideas from people because that's how I get a lot of ideas. Is kind of someone will say something and then my mind will take it to like a whole nother dimension.
Because your head is full of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't even know how you carry your head around. It's so full.
Do you always have a theme when you start one? Do you
Yeah.
always have an intention when you start?
Yeah, there's always an intention, definitely, and a lot of times it's something I want to learn about. So like, there's one that this one right here, got until the North Sky. So this one's 30 inches, and it's all the northern hemisphere constellations centered around the North Star in the center.
Wow.
So if you go around, I think this is winter, yeah. So there's winter, so Sagittarius, and then like it just absolutely goes all the way around. And that's one of the things I always wanted to learn was the constellations. And so, what better way to do it than to draw your own map of it, really? And now when I go outside, sadly you can't see too many stars nowadays, but when I'm in a place
So
where I
much
can,
light pollution.
yeah. But now when I'm in a place where I can see the stars, I know them pretty well, which is great.
I bet.
Now, a piece like that piece that you have shown right now, from the time you start researching it to actually doing it to finishing it, what's that time span like?
This one, so they're all different, which is kind of cool. And this is a good way to tell it. So this one's about 30 inches, and so it took about 3 months. But this one in particular is it's based on it's based on something concrete, so it's there. Like most of the research is already done. So I didn't have to like look with a telescope and kind of go back. Someone already kind of did that part of the research. I just had to take it to my own imagination. So it's so that wouldn't take as long as something like that animal one, where I had to keep kind of researching, and then I had to get like, you know, if a blue-tailed wallaby or something has like a blue tail and has a spot on its eye, like I'd have to get those details for those animals to keep it accurate. Whereas something like this, Sagittarius is imaginary, and the Scorpio is imaginary, so I can just kind of use my own mind to connect where the dots are. And so that's really how I started, is I made little circles where all the stars were, spirals where some of the galaxies were, and then I just kind of went around it and did it around. And it's funny though, because where that animal one took 9.5 months, I just finished one recently, a 30-inch mandala extinction, I called it. And I got 333 extinct animals, but I did it all in a month, and it was nuts. Like I just flew through it, but I figured out ways. There's a couple different reasons why, and so first I kind of, instead of with the animal one, the other one I kind of penciled it as I went. And I would, so I'd do maybe 20 animals, color them, and then I'd research 20 animals, color them, and it just kept going. This one I penciled out all kind of 300 animals, and then I went around it. And the other difference, like I said before, is where the other one with the animals at 1200 had all the details. The extinct animals don't have that because no one really knows what they are. So I could use my imagination, and I could just go with fossil records, and I could really fly through it. Whereas I didn't have to kind of be as precise, which is good. So it's kind of like a mix of like whether it's imagination, it will be quicker. If it's imagination and subconscious goes the quickest. And then sometimes it's subconscious with conscious, and other times well-researched. So there's a really big difference. And but everything kind of has a lot of symbol. Like this one has all the tarot cards. So this has got 78 of the tarot deck, like all kind of from the minors to the majors. And that's an interesting whole other world of the tarot. This one's got 80 symbols about love throughout time. So it's kind of split in kind of like a a masculine, feminine kind of thing, and that's a collaboration with my fiance. So that's got a whole different kind of love vibe. And there's one of Egypt. I love Egypt. I did that one around the same, I did these actually at the same time on the same piece of paper. And because I love Egypt. I love Tibet, that's what this one was for, and I love Egypt, so I wanted to honor them. And they, and their structures of the universe are also very different. And that's what I really like, is this guy, they have all kinds of pictures of this guy set with kind of forming the dome of sky. And so I really wanted to kind of draw that. And this one, when it's spinning, if it spins slowly, it looks like the guy's just kind of like, like going around.
So
Kinda
Dina,
cool.
did you do Ireland yet?
I did, yeah. I actually, I
Did
didn't do a mandala, but I have a Celtic cross that's got 40 different Irish symbols on it. Because I'm a little bit Irish too. I'm mostly Italian.
It seems like that would be a good fit.
It was the,
Yeah, with all the
Celtic
spirals,
knots.
sure.
Yeah, I love the Celtic knots, and they're ancient. They have a lot of
And they're
kind of
ancient.
fairy tale magic in their thing. And I love that. Just the magic you can't really beat. And then even occasionally I'll go like to other levels, like I'll sometimes I've done the sports logos, and this one's a Boston mandala. And this one actually, I think I did this one after the marathon of 2013. I actually, when I started selling art, pretty much when I was in Boston, I used to go to Newbury Street to sell. I met a guy named an artist that was selling on Newbury Street. I can't remember, but he kind of inspired me to do that as well. And so for like the first couple of years I ever really sold art, I was riding my bike from Brighton with like a backpack and like a basket full of stuff, and then I would just sit on Newbury Street with like a blanket for like hours, and that was really awesome. That's when I realized I loved just sitting around and selling art and talking about art and stuff. And then now I'm at the gallery. A big
And
step.
it's probably warmer.
Yeah, it is warmer. And then I have to ride back with it, which was always kind of a hassle through traffic. But it was worth it. Yeah.
Dino, what is that paper that you've done this on? What
This,
kind of
yeah,
paper is it?
the paper is definitely an important thing. I've made the mistake of doing one spiral on a paper that an art store guy recommended, and it was a nightmare. It smudged. It was just like bad. But so what I found that it works best for me is a mat board. So I'll order like a double thick mat board, like a really big paper, and I usually cut that into like whatever pieces I need. I think that's what this is. That way it's durable too.
Is it archival?
Yeah, I believe it is. I'm not sure. The inks are, I know that, and they stay. I've had some of my oldest ones stay. They stay really well, which is pretty intact. Unless they're in the sun, then they lose a little bit of stuff. But yeah, see, they got sturdiness so that they can spin, and because that's a big part of it. And if I get like if this kind of paper, if I get like a crinkle on it, I'll like hate it. I can't stand like if an artwork has like a crinkle on it. I'm not really sure why.
How would people display that in their home if they bought it?
This one, you could put it in I would probably, I was at the Zulo Gallery and I did an exhibit, and he kind of forced me to frame a bunch of originals that I had, and so I put them in black. I put them with a black background, and I just kind of put a
Square.
And you
square
can do
around it.
square frames with a round mat cut
Yeah,
around
that would be
the
really
mandala,
cool.
yeah.
That would be very cool. I actually too, I love inventing things, like we said, with wood, so I'm always making stuff out of wood when I have an idea. And so I made a couple frames that are like squares to fit the mandalas, and then you can rotate them on the wall. So I made like a thing where you can kind of just place it on the back, and you can turn it. So
Turn
really
it
you could
however
have
you
it just a
want.
continuously
Oh,
changing
that's good.
artwork,
That's a good idea.
which is
Looks
pretty
like
neat.
you should have a lava lamp in the room too.
Lava lamp. Well, that's another thing too. The light.
Yeah.
Like when spinning them, like I'm really into finding out all the different things that can happen, like visually and whatnot. So the light is very important. The speed is also very important of how it spins. Like if it's really fast, you won't see anything. But if it's slow, you will. But the light, like have anyone ever seen a spectrum light? One of those lights that constantly change throughout all the colors of the spectrum. When you this kind of art on that, everyone's art really on that looks really amazing. But it kind of changes, and you get to see it in all kinds of different ways, which is good. I'm kind of always all about trying to look at art in new ways, and also to get kind of points across. Like that one with the Boston one, like that happened. Like I was saying, I was on Newbury Street. I think where the second bomb went off was within 100 feet of where I was going to be that day, and I decided to go into the woods instead. Thankfully, I was there the day before though, because it's one of the best weeks to meet people in Boston. But thankfully I didn't go on that day, but I was so kind of upset that I was just kind of, I just wanted to draw something to honor Boston and its revolutionary past, and it's just kind of, its awesome culture. So I'll occasionally delve into things like that. This is the Tesla mandala, all kinds of Nikola Tesla inventions, a free energy mandala. This is one that took about 2 years, but not because of its intensity, more because of I had 4 spots filled, and then I needed more technologies, and so I kind of had to do research, and I think one of the technologies was invented as I was kind of doing it. So I'm always kind of into that. And then
Should do a Mandela.
a Mandela mandala?
Yeah.
I like that. A lot of people kind of have funnily suggested that. But that was what I was I was going to bring this one in because I was going to show you guys some kind of different kind of spots that I would fix if I were to do it. It's tough to do on that, but yeah, I can. I'll
Before you do that, you wanna take a break first, and then we'll,
Yeah, if you guys want that, I'll probably on the next round I'll probably get into the kind of the structure of a circle, which is kind of like a hidden structure within a circle that is really when I found this out I was blown away, and it really it's really interesting. You never look at a circle the same way again. It's almost every circle has this inherent structure where it can be animated.
There is exhausting, there is 5 minutes for you to be in there. His head is just so full of stuff.
and before we take a break, I just want people to know that if you ever wanna meet diNo, see
know
diNo,
where
talk to
he is.
diNo.
We know where he is.
He's at the Art Gallery, Patriot Place, the Artist Studio Gallery, Patriot Place, weekdays, noon to 5. I can't say every weekday, but almost,
Pretty much.
every weekday he's there, noon
It's
to 5.
hopefully not going to snow anymore, so.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
That would be wonderful.
But yeah, I love when people pick my brain, and I'm always kind of doing different things, and I encourage that. And the stuff that I'll go into in the next round is something that I feel is like a very important art form that nobody really knows about. It started kind of in the 1800s, and it just got it's kind of lost unless we can bring it back. But it's cool to really think about it because I guarantee you guys may if you ever do mandalas in symmetrical form, they'll probably animate if you spin them. And so a lot of you, and even ones that you don't, that if you're just drawing in a circle is an amazing thing. And that's what I want to encourage. But we'll take a little break and we'll get back.
Wow.
Get some questions ready too if you got.
Write them down, is that what he said?
You can read that. All right. So one of the things, the inevitable basically future for me discovering this and the spinning thing was thinking of ways to spin it. And so once I had the ceiling thing, that was the first, pretty much most primitive way. And then I thought of many different ways throughout the years of how to spin it. I used to take box fans and I would replace the fan with a circle and then use that as a spinner so you could spin it really fast. I made different things like tops that you could pull and kind of spin and see them in different CD spinners. I have a spinning easel, spinning frames. I have a mechanical one with an engine that goes up to like 2,000 RPM.
Wow.
And so I made all these different things in the best, and I knew that inevitably it would have to get to the digital era, or the computer era. And so I first took things and I used Flash, which is like an old Adobe animation program, and I kind of programmed these things spinning so I could see what they looked like spinning really fast on a computer. And they looked really cool, but they were tedious and they took forever to kind of do one. So I inevitably, a couple of years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago, I spawned the idea of making an app as apps were starting to become popular. So I designed it in my head and I got in touch with a team in India and we kind of formed it together, and which is actually kind of amazing because for something that would have cost way too much that I would have never been able to afford, I ended up meeting this guy in India who shared the same kind of mandala love that I had. He actually had a very tough experience at one point in time and was kind of like reborn as like for the mandala and kind of the Jainism religion, and it kind of took hold of him, and so he saw me coming to him as like an act, as like a sign.
Yeah.
So he cut the price and we worked amazingly, and it ended up being feasible because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to do it. So I created an app that basically allows you to spin different artworks or take pictures and you can see what happens and all the different things. And so, but the origins of something like that started with this thing called the phenakistoscope. And it was, they used to call it the magic wheel. It was like a toy in the 1860s. And it would basically look like this. I call this the diNo Kiss the Soap, because it's like kind of my version of it, my $3 version of it, and it works really well. But it illustrates the point of how it works. So like if something spinning like this, you can't. It just looks like a blur. It looks like an absolute mess.
Right.
So they figured out in the 1860s that if you had a filter like this, and you look through the filter, it allows it to animate. And so you can see it. It allows your eye to kind of separate the mess and turn it into something. And with the computers, the flicker rate, I realize, is what does it. Is how every TV, every screen has like a flicker rate. It's so fast that we can't even tell. That must be what makes it go from, or able to not look like a mess, which is really great, because if that had done all that work and it just looked like a mess, it would have been terrible. I would have been very disappointed. But so I can pass this around if you want to see it, but this is kind of, this is like a little toy thing. You can kind of like look through it, and it's a little tough to work, but you can kind of see how it works. But it kind of spins the frames for you, and you can see it kind of animate. And I made all these discs for it, and it's just a little toy, but this app does these things in extreme form. And so I'll show you guys real quick like what I'm talking about. And it's really interesting because, so this is one I call I call this the Men of Metal. But it's just kind of like, as a regular artwork, it just kind of looks like that. And it's just kind of spinning really slow. But then, if at different rates of speed, it turns into something totally different. So that's kind of, it starts to kind of become something.
Oh, I love the spiral in the center.
Yeah, the spirals you can't go wrong with. And then it inevitably locks up and becomes something like this.
Wow.
And it'll animate, and everything will
Wow.
kind of move. And then and there's all different kinds, really, like every kind of different speed. And then you go faster, and it'll inevitably lock up again in a different spot. And I actually, it's really, they're all kind of different, and you can zoom in and kind of really.
Wow, yeah, I've
get
seen that
lost in-
before. I don't wanna say where or when.
We'll assume.
Yeah.
But that, so that's kind of like one of the techniques for it. But in order to really kind of do this, you have to look at a circle, almost like a pizza. So and when I made, it's actually kind of funny, because I had been kind of doing mandalas on my own, knowing that something like this was possible, and but I never really totally came upon it like in the natural way, which I feel like I was about to when I made when I discovered phenakistoscopes from the 1860s. I was kind of like on the same path, and so I had known that something like this structure existed, but I hadn't pinpointed it yet. So then I came across these phenakistoscopes, and I really started to pinpoint it. And so I realized that dividing the circle into different frames was a factor. So this is separated into 10 degree boxes. So there's 36. This one's 12. This one's 24-degree boxes, so it's a little bigger, and this one's 18. And so as long as it's really even, I believe it works. And I wouldn't be surprised if the ones in between work, but I've only now kind of studied the even number, or just the ones that match with the 360.
So
And
wait, you said, I think this works. Does that mean if we put it on that scope that you?
Oh yeah, it would work on that.
Okay.
But with the scope is the factors are there's always tons of different factors that kind of make it work or make it not work. And so with this one, believe it or not, the spacing between the slits is actually incredibly important for how you'll see it.
Yeah.
Like if I just change the space, like if the spacings match, it almost works. It works pretty good. But sometimes when the spaces are different, it works interestingly. So there's all kinds of different variables that I encourage people to kind of really explore. And that's why, like, like certain ones, you almost look at these as frames. So this one has like 36 frames. And so one thing it'll kind of start at one spot and then like have incremental changes around each one. And that's what kind of adds to it. It really was the very first form of animation. And if you look at the 1860s ones, they have like guys in like suits, like kind of like tipping their hats to ladies.
Yeah,
and
the
there's,
horses.
like, the horses prancing, and there's like kind of like frogs jumping. It's really awesome. And they,
So you considered doing that type of animation in your spiral so that the things, alter a little bit?
yeah.
Okay,
So-
so
so
that's
that-
what you're doing.
So I did, so these ones are just kind of like the templates, and if I was gonna say if I had time I'd draw, but it takes too long for me to really draw stuff. You don't have to see it in a different time, it's probably too boring. But so basically when the app came out, it was right around the time I discovered these phenakistoscopes, which was perfect, because I went nuts. For like 3 months, I did nothing but draw these things, and I did nothing but think about these things. And it was really amazing. So I did a bunch of them, like this one will kind of, you can see how they
Wow.
progress. It's almost,
Raining?
so there's the structure, where is it? This one will explain the structure a little bit. So there's the frame size. You get the frame size, which is definitely a factor. And then I usually did, like with this one, I did little dots. That's kind of to, like, measurements. So that, because one of the things that's really important with the animation in general and with these is precision. Like if you're off, it's gonna show, like, big time.
Right.
And I don't, you guys ever hear of Richard Williams? The guy who did animator for The Thief and the Cobbler and Who Framed Roger Rabbit? He's a master. He's like a kind of an old Disney master, Richard Williams. He did this movie called The Thief and the Cobbler, which took him 30 years to do. And it's unbelievable. You thought this stuff was time consuming like lore. And he actually, when he talked to the Disney, I learned from everyone, and I learned what really is important from everyone, and I discard everything else. And so from him, because I like to listen to music when I draw, and even movies. But with animation, there's something different. And I remember he told a story of how he asked one of the old original Disney animators, like, what do you listen to? Like, do you put on classical music? And the guy screamed at him and was like, I listen to nothing. And like, it's dead silent. And then he said he was like scared. And then from that point on, he never listened to music again. And his focus was like, he was like, it's amazing. And I at first was like, I love music, so I'm like, I don't think I can do that. But when it comes to animation, like, you almost have to, because it's like every single part has to be like, if you lose focus, you just kind of wasted a lot of time. And it's really interesting. So you can do, so I did things like this that help the measurements. So that'll be like an inch apart. Each one I'll know. So there's different things you can do. Like the inherent design with the spiral is there's always a spiral that could exist. So this is just kind of one version of it, where if I were to draw a ball along this line, the ball, and you were to spin it, the ball would move along that line in a perfect spiral. But you really can make any form of spiral as long as it doesn't repeat on itself. So like it could be just like kind of more of a Nautilus one, and it would still work, and it would be, or kind of this one's a little bit tighter, and then this one's really tight. It's kind of just like a structure that you can follow if you wanted to do something. So you could draw, I drew a couple where I drew like a person, like walking this path, and then when he animates, you see the person like moving and kind of changing into a thing. I did one with a butterfly, which illustrates kind of the butterfly's process, and that one's one of my favorites. I'll show you real quick. Yeah, this one. So it kind of has the butterfly. It's got the central circle, which is what a lot of the old 1860s people did. They had a central kind of circle where something cool was happening, and then kind of the butterfly emerges from its thing. So the spiral is really up to you. It's just if the only thing you can do is you just don't want it to interfere. So you wouldn't want something in the middle of like a spiral path that doesn't belong. But
So, when you have those breaks in your thing.
oh yep, the frames.
Do they measure up to the
They
little spots
they
that
can.
you have on that?
This one I did at 30, just at 30 degrees, just to show. And a lot of these aren't really 30; they're a little smaller than that. So that was just kind of to show. That's like the really primitive form. Like people that had the phenakistoscopes, I imagine back in the day they had different like discs you could put in to change the thing, so you get a different kind of animation. And it's surprisingly it's pretty impressive how much those little kind of things do. But then the other thing, if you don't want to think about the spiral, the other form you can work is on the same kind of parallel of the circle. So that's like with this one, like in this one. So this eye is on the same level, and so it just animates. With every frame, it just changes a little bit. And same with this circle, it almost eclipses because they're all in the same zone. They're all in the same kind of like point. So it's almost like you can look at it in when you're designing these, you can really look at them as a hidden innate spiral, or as just a bunch of different structures that will animate, and you can combine them too.
And those are the same distance from the center, and
Yep.
that's, okay.
Yeah, and that's what keeps them so that when they'll spin. Let me see if I can show one. Well, kind of like that last one, but this one's kind of cool.
Anybody shows the spin.
Yeah, this one I called Knee Deep. Oh, where'd it go? Knee Deep in the Hoopla in honor of Starship. Where'd it go? Oh, yeah. Yeah, so this one this was actually based on an 1860s kind of design where a guy was jumping through a hoop. So I wanted to try that. And so for a while it doesn't really do much. And then inevitably it will like,
Oh my God, it went from the,
Wow.
it's changing all the time.
Yep.
It looked like a slinky for a minute.
and really it's it all dependent on the speed.
On the speed.
And it's so the new thing, and I don't want anyone to take my idea. But I'm working with the team in India actually to, he's gonna develop an app just for me where we'll tell the rate of spin, and I'm gonna figure out the science of this, because I'm like determined to figure, my next step is to literally figure out exactly why at a certain speed it does it, because I'm convinced that, you know, a 30-degree frame will kind of link and form almost its unity at a particular number, and I'm really curious as to what that number is. And there's some, and because I feel like there's a science behind all this, and it's really, sometimes you can get it where it doesn't even move. Like sometimes it can spin so much that it doesn't even, it's still. And it's really, so it's kind of like, it's really an imaginary spectrum of like power that kind of gives the circle it's magic. And the thing that's cool is this is like kind of well, not really symmetry, but kind of like the constructed version of it, but you can really do anything. And I mean, mandalas, like I said, with that spiral one that I did, there's no rhyme or reason to it, but when it spins, it looks incredible. And then there's certain ones, like that one that I showed you with the Mayan calendar. I think that was when I started to really think that the ancients knew something about spinning. Is the Mayans they're fantastic. And for some reason, like I said with Dali, I had those dreams. Whenever I do a Mayan or an Aztec artwork, I can get to periods when I don't even feel like I'm drawing. Like I had one point when I was doing that calendar when I was talking to a friend and I didn't even realize I was doing anything, and it was weird. And that usually only happens with Aztec. Like certain different things happen with different things, but that happens every time I do something Mayan. I feel like something's kind of like possessing me.
Connected.
Yeah, like something's kind of, it's coming from elsewhere. And then with the circle, with the Aztec calendar, when I spun it for the first time, I noticed a snake, which was amazing because one part of their whole system is that there was this cosmic serpent, and you know, they believed in a lot of different things, and this formed into a snake, and the face turns into there's a couple different illusions that I kind of have documented over time, but this face, when it spins, since I kind of designed it so you can look at it that way, and then you can also look at it this way. When it slowly spins, your mind kind of sees one face, and then it sees the next face, but that space, that timing in between when you see one face and you see the next is something kind of mysterious that I also want to look further into. But it's just, you never really know. And then at really fast speeds, kind of different things kind of will pop up. Like these things around the edge will kind of unite almost in this kind of way. So it's like, I really feel like they must have known some stuff. And this one, this Buddha mandala, is kind of, it's split into 4 ways, which would please Carl Jung. And he believed that a lot of stuff was kind of split into like 4 or 3 ways and kind of pertained to
Like the
different.
seasons.
Yep, all in a bunch of things. And so this was a Buddhist one. This is actually my favorite one to spin because it almost appears like this central kind of mandala almost appears either in the distance or to pop out, and then it looks like these guys are kind of like the gods are almost dancing around it in like a cosmos.
And what happens if you spin one in the opposite direction?
The same kind of stuff. The direction really doesn't matter too much. That's what I'm going to have when I get this mandala science kind of creation. I'm going to have the ability to turn it the other direction so I can see if it does do something different.
You
But
consider making, tops.
yeah, but then
Because they have those, have you seen the disc ones?
Kind of
Well, I've got one that it's kind of,
with the
it's
lights.
metallic, no, it's just, it's metal, metallic, and it just has, it's metal, and it's just got this tiny little point, almost like a dimple at the bottom, but you just spin it like this, and it
looks cool.
does wild stuff.
Really?
Yeah. And
Is
if
it
you
more of like
put
a-
those on there, and you could do it any size. You could even make them big, like a plate even. It's just about having
Nice.
that dimple at the bottom.
And so it doesn't hit the sides.
No, so
and
it
spins.
so it spins, yeah.
That sounds great. I've tried things like that with a marble. I put like a marble at the bottom and kind of I've done it.
Yeah.
But does the design work, or does it blur and become really?
Well, it's an abstract design.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
So it doesn't matter.
You could probably. I was thinking. I have a top. I was trying to think of a way to unite those, because in order to see it, you'd have to have
Well,
almost this filter.
I'll bring mine to the gallery
For certain.
someday so you can see it, and actually, if you had, a small one, you could actually glue it onto,
All right, to the wood or something, or
to the metal and
Oh,
just, and then.
tape it on and test it.
Yeah, test it.
All right.
I'll bring it over.
All right, yeah, I'm always down for things like that. I love figuring out new ways to spin things, and I really think it's gonna be, like, the circle, the sphere is definitely next on the, or coming up on the roster. It's just a matter of trying to find out where to get one of those. But, it will happen. But as far, so yeah, so but what do I feel, I feel like these are, they're really kind of, like, since the 1860s, no one really, and like with technology now, once they surpass something, people tend to not really go back to it. And so, but this kind of, people with GIFs have kind of made things like this. I don't know if you've seen those animated files, animated images online. Sometimes people kind of do this, but not really, not in this way. And I feel like there's like an unbelievable way to kind of, to do it and for people to kind of learn about it. I think they'd be fascinated. And even different kinds of things, like I have, like where these are totally two opposites. So this one's kind of, this codes. So I made kind of a grid, and I kind of, I like strategically placed each color kind of in a thing, so at different speeds, different things will kind of emerge from it, different little patterns. That was kind of a tester thing. And then this was almost just kind of, part of my other, I like to comment on social issues sometimes, and although I like to stay away from it
Boy,
most of
imagine
the
where we
time.
could find something like that to comment on. Social issues.
But so this one, so I always like to try and think of things that can symbolically work, and this one I did unity, and so it's kind of like a black and white thing. It says unity, and they're all joining hands with hearts, and like everyone's holding hands. And this one, when it spins, looks. Let's see if I can find it. I think I have it here. This one, so it kind of. So it works on a regular level as its message, but then but still they're separate. Black and white is still kind of separate in that drawing, but then you can kind of as it spins, it gets a little different, and then inevitably it has this one speed where something ridiculous happens. Yeah, around
Yeah.
there, where it almost turns gray,
Yes.
and it's like it just kind of melds that thing. So it's almost like it has more meaning as it spins. And it has
Could
different.
hypnotize somebody with that.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
very hypnotic.
Oh, yeah.
But they're really cool, and how the hearts move, and yep.
Do you ever think of contacting somebody from PBS and doing a story on you? I mean, it's so fascinating.
I would love to.
You're really fascinating, and I
No,
think
I
there are a
agree,
lot of
I agree.
young kids out there with scientific minds and artistic minds, and they would hone in on you, and you could have a lot of little dinos out there.
They would
And
like it.
I think it would be fascinating. I think they would,
Yeah.
I think they're ready for you.
Yes, that's what I need. I need them to be ready, and which is good.
Adele, it's kind of funny you say that, because at the art gallery, we have families that come in, and all of a sudden they'll start talking to Dino. Now the parents about an hour into it, okay, they wanna go to eat, they wanna do something,
Not
what are
the
they gonna do?
kids.
The kids all wanna stay.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
great.
why couldn't you contact
I
them
love it.
about it and give them a little
Spiel.
thing
You
on
have
you?
to
this
make
is
time.
good.
You have
This
to
is
make
this is a
time.
good little. This is a good thing to have, kind of, to show people that.
I know,
what I
even
can
if
do.
you were able to get a copy of what, this
I will.
gentleman is doing tonight, and to show it to some, I don't know, it's just fascinating to me.
Yeah, when I was actually at an after-school program before I went to the gallery, and when this app came out, it was really a sensation, and the kids like loved it, and they kind of. I didn't even expect them to latch onto it as well as they did, but they really did. And like with me, like when it came out, for like I said, I was obsessed for like 3 months straight, and I like, couldn't do anything else. But I couldn't even think about other stuff too. Like I was constantly, like everything I'd look at and spin it, and then I got the kids thinking the same thing. So every time they would look at, like 100 times a day, they'd be like, "Oh, let's spin that." Or like, "Oh my God, we can spin that." And then also like there's one time too where I even separated, like I kind of chalked out one of these kind of patterns, and we had people kind of stand on it, and we took a picture, and you can make like your own kind of you take a picture of the circle and you guys have created your own almost animated mandala just by, so there's so many different lessons. I love teaching, and that would be a great thing in time. And this is, and it's funny you say that, because when this app came out, like, you know, I was like, oh my, it's gonna be great, everyone's gonna love it, it's gonna spread so far and wide. And then literally within the same week, the fidget spinners became a craze. And fidget spinner apps came out, and millions of people downloaded an app that does the same exact thing as the fidget spinner they just bought. And then this app, which has unlimited, infinite potential, just
What's the app?
Yeah,
What's the app?
it's called Mandala Magic.
Oh.
But it's just funny that I mean, out of all those years, I spent years thinking of this, and literally within the same week, it hit that pop cultural craze, and it got buried.
Now, is that something that someone could buy, or?
Oh yeah, it's online. It's on the iTunes store, Mandala Magic app, or you can look at your iTunes store and type Mandala Magic, and you'll find it. But it is. I mean, it's really learning about it. It helps on so many different levels, because you can abstract, and I like to tell everyone that, you know, you can like, there's this strict form to do it, but you could throw something around and throw something on and discover a new form. It's a very fresh form of creativity that I don't feel like not many people are really doing it, if any. And it's untapped, and there's a lot of potential for really kind of, it's like giving yourself a little bit of frame to work with, and it's really cool. And kids love it too, which is great. So, and they can easily do it, which is also good. I'll pull them away from their iPad, but then kind of bring them back.
All right, so what's with the cracked one?
Oh, this one right here. Okay, so that's good. So in my quest for illusions and stuff, I always am looking for different like illusions, just constantly. Like anyone ever seen a post sunset upside down? You can almost convince yourself you're in space. It's amazing. And then sometimes, like, if you have I'm always looking for illusions. Like, there's one time I put a candlelight between the shower and the bathroom, and I had a transparent shower curtain, and the candle mixed with the droplets on the curtain formed basically, like, you could almost, it looked like you were looking at stars in space, and you could pretend that you could convince your body that you were like in space in the shower. And so I like that kind of other one with the sunset upside down. Me and my friend, we could convince our brain that we were almost floating in space above Earth, and we actually got nauseous, which is pretty cool. So I love illusions. Jack mentioned an illusion that I did that I have at the gallery, which is reverse perspective, and it's kind of like there's like a 3D kind of box, and like what comes out, like the parts that protrude outwards actually appear to be inwards. And so that's a kind of cool thing that I've really experimented. So I did like one with like a figure kind of like in the middle, and he's almost floating. And there's a Buddha one at the gallery. And so this is kind of another little illusion trick. And it's one of those ones where at the gallery I ask people if they can do it, and then they look at me like I'm nuts. And that happens a lot. I've done it a couple times. But then when someone gets it and they're like, oh, I see it, then it's worth it. But so this one is kind of it's like a stereoscopic image, and so. It's kind of the same thing. They have those virtual reality headsets, but on a closer level. And Dali did one of Jesus on a cross that was like this, and you view it from a certain distance.
Yes.
And you cross your eyes a little bit.
Yeah.
So this one's kind of like that. It's like if you cross your eyes in a particular way, and your eyes kind of mold both images together, and it becomes a 3D thing. And usually there's lenses for it. And but I figured out how to do it without a lens, and so I kind of like with my eyes.
The camera's catching all of us.
Yeah, exactly.
Just don't pass out or anything.
Doing what we tell our grandkids not to do.
We're moving it.
Your eyes
Oh,
will
there you
get
go,
stuck
keep it.
like that.
You can also take away. It's easier if you hold it, because then you can really gauge the distance, because you need to get the distance right on the money. And but it looks cool, and so I experimented with these a lot, and they're really. I'm gonna experiment with a big one of these. And I actually, at the gallery on my spinner, I have a huge version of. I decided to do like a 25-inch or 24-inch version of a mandala like this. So when it's big, like when it's small, you can fit a lot of stuff. But when it's big, you can really unravel a lot of different things. And so that's still a work in progress. But these ones are really cool. You can see them. It might hurt your eyes a little, but I've gotten to the point where I can like click into these, and it's easy. Like I can see it really easily. And there was one day when I did it at the gallery for like hours, and I was a little too much. Because I was like, it was bad, I started to hurt. But,
Yeah, but I was like that with those magic.
Magic
books.
Eyes, yeah.
I got to the point, where I would just turn the page and there it was.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could only see the image, I could only see the outline, but I could never tell what it was.
Oh, yeah, and it was.
It used to aggravate me so much.
And when you got it, boy, it just
Really?
pops right out.
It's a similar thing, I believe it's a similar technique,
Yeah.
but I'm not positive.
Very cool.
But, and it also kind of, part of my illusion obsession, I think, is also partly based on, kind of the ancient Buddhist thought that a lot of what we see really could be an illusion, and, you know, there's infinite space between everything, nothing ever, all these kind of different, theoretical ideas that are either ancient or science is trying to prove, and, you know, like I said, I don't really take anything too seriously unless I can totally prove it, because I'm very conscious of there being a lot of theories out there, and I make it clear in my head to separate theory from fact, and because if I think something's a fact and it's actually a theory, then that's stopping my mind from thinking about a lot of different things, of potential things, and so I like to keep my mind open to being kind of embracing everything that's possible. And so the illusions, my quest for illusions is really kind of a take on that, almost like inevitably trying to discover something, some way to turn a two-dimensional thing into something that's far more, and that can't, my goal is basically to make something that can't be ignored by anyone. And so like where someone just, you have to appreciate it because it's just overwhelming. And so someday I'll come up with that.
Well, maybe if you get that done, then you can convince a few people that there really is global warming.
Yeah, we'll convince it. Whatever, that is my main intention is save Earth is kind of like my mantra, and that's been my mantra. It's actually funny because I had another realization that I got back into music a couple days ago trying to do something, and I remembered that used to be my goal with music before I even knew art. Like that was my, I always thought, I was always under the impression that a song could, like one creative work could change the world, whether it's a song, a book, an artwork. Like I've always been under that impression, and that's probably never gonna leave me. And so like with that in mind, I kind of have continued to kind of progress and hope that it will inevitably work, and that something like one day, like, the secrets kind of keep unveiling themselves, and with art it's really, I feel like the best way to explore these kind of things. And nowadays there's so many different visual treats out there on the internet, you can just kind of research a lot of different things and combine forces with stuff. But I'm very keen on that save Earth mentality, putting good intentions into every artwork, and really kind of expanding people's potential for like their creative powers, which I feel is very important for everyone to really explore. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, you can feel free to ask now or at the gallery or whatever you guys think. I don't know what the time is. I mean, they're closing.
Yeah, we're okay.
Well, thank you guys so much. That was nice. I appreciate it. That was great.
Thank you, Dino.
Yeah, thank you, Dino.
I really get people that are interested for that long, so I like that. I really appreciate it.
What's
No, I knew this would be an
the,
interesting discussion.
kind
Called
of-
the universe, and so this is actually a funny one. It's good that you picked this. I forgot about this one. But when I kind of, it's almost meant to be held like a diamond.
Okay.
But remember I was telling you about sometimes subconscious things happen that I don't even plan for at all? This was a big one, where I noticed that maybe 4 years later, but there's kind of, after I got into Jainism, they have a theory that that there's like all these massive elephants underneath, and they're holding up the world. They have this kind of really intense thing. And then this eye, looks like the eye of an elephant, and then there's